Hello.
Welcome back.
We forgot some tips.
What? You know we didn't. We're just going over them for good measure. You know how it is. Us crazy cats on the internet.
So I'll put a time code on the screen if you don't really care for the tips, but we're going to go through those now.
Yeah, we missed a couple at the end of part 9.
What is this?
What? What is what?
What is what?
It's new music.
It is new music.
Which is great.
Listen,
right?
I'm a fan.
Are you?
The thing is, right, is that a lot of this music is not explicitly better than the old stuff.
There is one track that is objectively better. Unfortunately, it's also the meme track that we love to hate. It's our boy Dawn.
Yeah.
Which has been unshitified, which is good technically. But I'll be honest, I'm a bit sad that they've taken out all the old tip stuff.
I will not miss them at all.
I miss Digital Network already. I'm already scared to read Higurashi.
Other than this video, the first time you'll hear the new music will be the first episode of Higurashi.
Yeah, because that's what we're up to in the story proper. But yeah, they've changed all the music. I don't know why. Apparently it was Ryukishi's decision, or 7th Expansion's decision. Let's be clear.
Back it 100%.
I do not. I am big hard no.
Back.
Let us know in the comments how you feeling, but I am not a fan of it. I miss Digital Network. I don't know why they changed it. I'm okay with Dawn being updated, but like, why change the songs? They're so fun and weird, and I love them, and nostalgia.
Let me put this from my perspective. I have not had enough time to get attached to the music.
You're not attached to any music ever. You've never been attached to anything, Felix.
Untrue. We know this. I still listen to Periphery's Juggernaut Alpha Omega.
I don't know what that is.
Far more regularly than I should.
I don't know what that is, so it doesn't count.
But I haven't had enough time to get attached to them, and I like these changes. Like, there's a few of them that I was beginning to get attached to. Like Digital Network, I definitely... Is it Digital Network?
Digital Network is the club music.
One of the club tracks. There's
it's
a few
the club
of them.
It's the big, like...
No, not that one.
No, it's not. Sorry, it's the... Which one is it? I don't know which one it is, but it's a club track. It's a club track. And they've changed it.
Definitely more than one club track.
There are plenty of them.
But anyway, I'm happy.
I'm not. I'm not a fan. Anyway, let's see these dumb tips.
This is the tips we missed.
May I?
Go for it.
The Hojo family. Every year, Osho-sama's curse claims 2 victims. How exciting. This means that with 4 years in a row, there have been 8 now. But it's worthwhile to note half of them have been members of this family. Note, the curse on the second year, a certain falling accident, involved the death of Hojo, a damp opponent, and the disappearance of his wife.
This tip, I think, would have been the same video as when I was trying to math up whether it was half or not, and this would have made me look real fucking stupid.
It would have.
Not that I didn't already, but hey.
She was pronounced dead the following year after being considered to have vanished under perilous circumstances.
Perilous circumstances.
That sounds like a real legal term. The curse on the 4th year involved the death of the Hojo siblings' aunt, who was then their foster mother, and the disappearance of the older brother.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Stop doing that.
I went to adjust my hand
every single time. It's always with the clicking.
I'm cutting it. I'm cutting this.
You can't quit. It's too late. It has to stay in for justice.
Cutting this.
Let us know in the comments if you think this isn't justice. This isn't justice.
Cutting this.
The Hojo family is a poor one, and it's hard to say Mr. Hojo's job went very well. Apparently, upon re-employment via family connections, there was a plan for them to return to the home of the mother's side of the family of the mother. For Mr. Hojo, the eviction due to the Hinamizawa Dam project and the payment of a large amount of compensation money was essentially a windfall. It was essentially a windfall. Mm-hmm. There you go. What are you thinking?
Is that a pun because they fell to their death? So
I think so.
They fell.
That makes sense. There was wind and it like blew them off the cliff. Yeah. Mr. Hojo aggressively accepted. Sure. I would like to shake your hand very, very firmly, sir. The Ministry of Construction's negotiations from an early stage and selected others from Hinamizawa who were also dam proponents. It was rumored he had been bought out by the Ministry of Construction for doing so, but the truth is unknown. But because it's a murder mystery, we should assume that it's true.
Well,
because all rumors are true in murder mystery.
If he's accepted the payment to be evicted, he's been bought out.
It's true. That is literally how that goes legally.
That's not even a truth being unknown. That's just what happened.
Fact.
He was just happy with the quantity and no one else was.
Yeah. He was like, here comes my big sack of money, but I might not have been bought out. Don't worry, guys.
That's fucking stupid.
It's great. However, the dam's proponents were in the vastly outnumbered minority. In addition, as the Sonowazaki family, that's a weird, is that like the fourth family that showed up out of the woodwork? I suppose so. As the Sonowazaki family strengthened its own foundation and promised support against the dam, all the proponents, save for Mr. Hojo, switched over to the anti-dam side. At this point, Hinamizawa was completely united against the dam, and Mr. Hojo was held up to ridicule as a stooge of the dam project's proponents. He was essentially used as a scapegoat for the anti-dam coalition. That doesn't sound good. In the end, the dam project collapsed with Oyoshiro-sama's curse and the dismemberment incident. However, the punishment towards the bitter enemies supporting the dam project continues to this day. ... There are not many left today who supported the dam project, nor who had a negative reputation at the time. If there were any candidates left for the curse, it's the husband of the housewife who was beaten to death last year, Teppei Hojo, and Mr. Hojo's daughter, Setiko Hojo. Strangely, these two are the only candidates left. Spooky music.
That sounds louder than it used to be. That might be part of the remaster as well.
No, who knows, dude. Will this year's curse come down on the two of them? Oh, there is more than enough value in observing them both. I suppose we'll just have to read on and find out.
Yep.
In the next exciting episode of Oishi's Post Memo. To Oishi-san, there was a call from you from Section 4's Chief Shigeharu. Apparently, the slaughtered corpse in the Ushikawa River is related to the S Group, as we thought. We're still verifying what happened behind the scenes, but apparently the deceased filled up dozens of self-created fictional bank accounts to their limits with money from the S Group, reaching around 100 million yen. It appears there were 3 or 4 men with former S-Group connections involved in this. They've already disappeared, along with millions of yen. The deceased was tortured on that point for information. She was clearly slaughtered as an example to others. There are apparently some real wizards with magical spells chasing down the people who disappeared. They're also spreading letters to related Yakuza groups not to harbor them. There's still no evidence that Teppei Hojo is one of those people. From what Chief Shigeharu has seen, nothing's been announced. For such a dependent, the man wasn't trusted at all. Teppei Hojo has left his apartment in Okonomiya and has returned to his former residence in Hinamizawa.
It's not terribly far to move, as far as I understand.
No, it's like an hour or something, yeah. Not too far.
Okay.
But hey, you gotta get away from the S Group.
Higurashi,
look, dude,
we got it.
You gotta get away from the S Group, so you move into Hinamizawa from Okonomiya, right? That's how that works.
That's how that works.
That's how you get away from the Sonozakis. You move into the town that they are most prominent in.
That seems very contradictory, and I feel like it has to play with something.
Maybe it does. Maybe it does, dude. But yeah, apparently that deceased corpse. Apparently she was swindling the S Group, getting all their money in false bank accounts and stuff in those Swiss bank accounts. Do you remember what part these tips played immediately after? Do you recall?
Between parts 9 and 10.
But like, do you remember what the events were?
So part 9 was not too long after the barbecue, right?
Yeah.
And part...
It wasn't too far in.
Oh, it was just after Oishi showed up for the first time. That's
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, part 9 was the scene with Irie and Oishi in the school
courtyard
or whatever.
I don't know what kind of, deductions you're going to make from that, but it's pretty clearly just like fleshing out the surrounding space of Teppei, right?
Yeah.
And why he's in the town, what he's doing there, what's happened with his main squeeze, who apparently has been murdered by the Sonozaki. I think it also does a good job of being like, yo, the Sonozakis, they do some shit.
I almost wonder if, like,
they're not totally
the
harmless.
Sonozaki family just brought in, like, tried to bait Teppei back into the village so that he could be the curse for this year.
Maybe.
And they're, like, also trying to figure out who the fuck's doing it.
Maybe. Who knows, dude?
Yeah. Well, let's get onto this recap.
Let's do it.
So, goodness.
You've got an essay here to read from what I can tell.
The set of notes that I have for Tatari Higurashi is perhaps the most extensive we've had for any post edit.
Mostly his notes this time, which is fun. You got a lot of theorizing to do.
Yeah,
so let's tackle it.
We're pretty much like about to jump into the answer arcs, so this is going to be like part of a theory dump and then also partly at the beginning of Higurashi.
Yep.
But oh my goodness. I think the first thing I wanted to address before we moved on to like theory stuff was just the like tone of the episode in general.
Yeah.
There were some comments, some DMs that I got about like the fact that we were extremely tone deaf in regards to like, you know, obviously how great the situation with Sadako was.
I mean, not wrong, but I think that's kind of part of the challenge, especially for the tone we're like trying to go for with the playthrough. Because like I've seen it before. I know it's gonna happen. I know we're gonna find Sadako in the bath and she's like horribly tortured. But I can't spoil that for you. I can't be like, this is a serious scene. You should be like serious, you know. And I also have to kind of maintain that tone that we like to keep throughout the series. And I've gotten a lot of comments from people saying, you know, the mix of the horror of the story and the like mad jokes that you guys are splitting all the time, like it's perfect. That's like a good balance.
Yeah.
Also, it very much reflects like the way that the arcs are structured with the like, we start off with the happy fun times and then we move into the deep serious times. So what we're doing does have some precedence. We're not just flailing around. Like we're not, I feel at least, and maybe you guys in the comments might have a different feeling. I don't feel like we're disrespecting the work.
No, I think the other thing that I would say is that at least to me in editing, I was pretty well happy with that balance.
Yeah.
Because every time we got to one of those scenes where like things got heavy, we'd tone it down and we'd comment on the fact that like, oh, this is a bit like out of place for this joke.
Yep. It's not like we're just saying, you know, poop jokes and like, you know, abuse jokes and things over and over again. We're making an attempt to be respectful of the work. And whether or not we like reach the bar that you expect of us or whatever is like totally up to you, but I feel like we're doing a pretty good job.
I don't want to say whether we're doing a good job or not because that's very much not our call to make, but I'm happy with what we're putting out.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you disagree, like the reason I brought this up is because I'd like to hear it. I do want to know, like especially if you want to tell Ben, even if you just want to wrap it in the comments, because obviously there's stuff that we're getting to later on that might be heavier. I'm not sure.
Slap it at me. Slap me those tags.
Yeah, but I think ultimately, like showing our discomfort with some of these issues when they come up is, I think, appropriate.
Yeah.
And I'm totally fine with that. I do think, as I said, that I think it was in the previous recap just before this, that Higurashi did a very tasteful job of addressing these themes.
Yep.
It would be very out of place in a more Western work.
Yeah.
But I think it was really nicely done, especially kind of exploring it from the perspective of a character who had no idea what to do.
Yep. I mean, I think that's very appropriate, and that's very much like his point at the end is that like there is no obvious answer. I mean, the shout out to that one scene where Rena like lays the smackdown on Keiichi, like, well, she'll just live with you then, and it'll be fine, right? That's totally feasible.
Yeah.
He's like, but we can't. Wait, what if I like had her live in the basement?
Yeah, like I won't say in which context it was, for the sake of the people involved.
Sure.
Because I don't want anyone tracking them down. But like I've been through helping people through similar situations, be it like, you know, students or friends or whatnot. Sure. So like I could very much relate to the like the difficulty of deciding what to do in those situations.
The helplessness.
Yeah, they're so specific and in need, and it's awful.
Yeah, I haven't been in an exact situation like this, but I can empathize that feeling of like there's a problem, you know, it's a social problem, it's a systemic problem in society, and I'm just not sure how to get out of it, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's definitely a real tricky thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think the other thing that this is less of it like a defense and more just of a comment that a lot of the time, and it's kind of interesting that the defense for these sorts of issues coming up is to laugh. Like it's one of the ways that we kind of, you know, if we're feeling discomfort during the playthrough. I know there are more instances of this, I think, in Umineko. But a very like easy reaction to kind of slip into is like, oh, isn't it funny that this is happening when it's totally not funny?
Yeah. I mean, that's just kind of one thing that people use comedy for a lot. That's why, like, you know, jokes about horrible figures through history
that's why they exist.
Are a thing.
Shout out to Springtime with Hitler, because that is like, there is a video, I'm going to see if I can find it and post in the comments. There's a video that is like in defense of Springtime with Hitler and how like, how revolutionary that kind of like comment about Hitler is in terms of completely like wiping away his footprint on the modern world. It's a fantastic video. It's like really well researched. It's not just shitposty.
Yeah.
But it's a shitposty movie. But yeah, no, I definitely think that humor has its place in comedy in like dealing with this sort of issues. But yeah.
Yeah, but as always, like, let us know, because I'm very interested to hear what you guys think. As much as this show is for us to read the novel, it's also for you guys to watch. So feel free to let us know. But
tell us your feelings.
Yeah, let's get into the actual like theory nonsense.
All right, the important stuff.
So towards the end of Tatari Higurashi, I said some wild shit.
We should also point out we have read Arc 4, so watch out for Arc 4 spoilers potentially. In what Felix is talking about.
I'll put up a thing at the start.
Yeah, throw it on.
There's not a lot of Arc 4-ness going on here, but...
Yeah, you never know.
But there was a lot of stuff, and I mean, particularly what we said in the previous recap about, like, gaslighting and just throwing out 100 theories and seeing which one sticks. A lot of the stuff that I said towards the end of Tatari Higurashi, I think was very much in that vein where I was, like, a little bit lost, so it was, like, just throwing out any possibility that came to mind.
Are you saying that you were lost trying to solve a mystery, Felix? Have you been dethroned?
I mean... I feel like if that's not the way that you perceive me all the time, then you've misunderstood the way that I do things.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure that you just always know what's going on, and you're like, you got big thonk brain. That's why. You're like Keiichi in 1500 seconds, except it'll only take me 1500 seconds to solve this mystery if I can just do X, Y, Z.
Yeah,
that's you, right?
I mean, I think I've had pretty decent luck a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And I hate using luck in this context, but like I have a generally good grasp on like the direction a story's themes are going.
Structure,
particularly, you know, as I said in the previous recap, going like full circle on the things that Ryuki's tried to present to us.
Yep.
I have a general understanding of, you know, maybe where he's trying to get us when I first come into these stories, so it kind of makes it easier to throw things in the right direction.
You have good expectations, especially considering you've read Mineko. That definitely helps.
Like there's a bunch of themes that I think have clearly been brought up. Like I think that there's, I'll throw up on screen from 3 Part 12, there was a little discussion that kind of made me think about like Takano's connection to father figures, because that's something that kind of keeps coming up around her.
Right.
And that's a theme that I think we might get into later down the line, particularly when I was talking about in our first few recaps for Higurashi, on how it's so obvious that she's the villain, so thus why she's the villain is going to be more significant of an issue.
Sure.
So I think maybe that connection to the father figure might be something that we kind of flesh out a bit more as we move forwards.
For sure.
But, you know, that's just an example from a bunch of the stuff. The main thing that really I was listening back and editing and just going like, what the fuck are you on about? Was like all of the world jumping and magic bullshit.
Dude,
and
that was
the
great.
fact that he's hallucinated the whole thing.
Who knows, dude? It could be magic, right?
Like, I think obviously people might be like, when I said, you know, he hallucinated that the body was gone, and then they're like, but the police were there. And I'm like, yes, well, obviously he also hallucinated the police being there. But that's a load of shit, because then what the fuck else purpose does that scene serve, right? And I think that more my point there is like how much of those scenes we can trust. You know, obviously I was a little bit lost when I was throwing those ones out, because those I mean,
you're in the moment, right?
Yeah.
You're in the middle of the war zone, and now you're on the other side, like telling war stories, trying to figure out what the hell happened.
So I think what happened, if I was to try break down specifically Arc 3 at the moment,
slap it down,
is Keiichi did kill Teppei.
Oh.
Because, like, you know, what the fuck else was that entire sequence if it wasn't actually him being killed? I think also in particular, when we got down to the whole scene and Irie was, like, saying, yeah, you know, it seems like you remember that pretty well. I think that was the truth. But then Irie goes out and says, like, there are obviously falsehoods and fabrications in his memory. It's like multiple personality disorder. What Keiichi has probably presented to Irie is like, hey, there's this other voice in my head that's a fucking psychopath.
Right.
And that's what Irie is referring to. And, like, psychopath head Keiichi isn't aware that that's the way that he's portraying himself. Maybe. So that's why he's like confused about Irie's reaction. So I think that he did kill Teppei. I think that Irie did believe him. The question is, when Irie is like, how many male staff are here? Did they then send those male staff out to recover the body? Did they then, or was it like, Mion trying to cover for him? Because there's this whole thing towards the latter end of the chapter where Mion's like doing all of these things that are very out of character to keep Keiichi from leaving effectively. So like she's like, yeah, I'll come dumpster diving, when it's specifically pointed out that that's something she wouldn't normally do.
Right.
So I think that those are all kind of clues that, maybe Mion actually does know what's going on, and they're trying to provide a cover story for Keiichi.
I wouldn't underestimate Mion. Who knows what she's capable of.
It's really weird, though, like, because they obviously never explicitly tell him what they're doing in those circumstances.
Sure.
They're just like, yeah, let's go out to the dump site. Why don't you make sure you go to the hospital and make sure that you get a note for it, Keiichi? Like, it almost seems like an instruction booklet how to make alibi.
Maybe.
So, maybe, like, them or someone else, maybe Takano just came back after faking a death, dug up the corpse, and skedaddled out of there. Maybe that's the car that Ueshi's looking for, because the car should have been gone because it was Takano's, but it came back into town.
Sure.
That doesn't seem incredibly far-fetched to me. That's obviously recontextualized a bit by Himatsubushi, but
sure.
I don't think that that's necessarily mutually exclusive.
For sure. I mean, there is the question of, like, because Himatsubushi, some Himatsubushi spoilers, Himatsubushi. It's just easy to say Tsuburushi at this point.
It really is.
It's so weird. Himatsuburushi, it's done. There is some question of, like, whether the events of both arcs are the same.
Yeah.
I guess the other question that I have for you, you've said some stuff about Irie, like, being like, yo, it's like he has multiple personality disorder, and like, where are all the boys? Let's bring him in or send him out or whatever. What is the point of Irie in this story?
What is the point of Irie in this story? What is the point of
Irie and his little avocado glasses?
I don't know. It's very strange. I feel as though,
like, why bring him in? That should be a fairly, like, straightforward answer, right?
He's obviously meant to be, like, one of the more objective perspectives in the story.
Okay.
Especially when we're getting down to dealing with, like, the Hinamizawa syndrome.
So kind of like Ueshi, really?
A little bit, yeah. Okay, but kind of from a different angle, right?
Sure.
Isn't that Ueshi's, like, there with the perspective of, like, I want to stop these crimes. I want, like, I guess, revenge for what happened to my friend, the site foreman. He's obviously still there with a motive, but he's there with, I want to stop these crimes. Irie, he's probably there in the guise of, like, I know about this madness, I want to stop it. I think particularly when we look at Sadako's character through this arc, she's obviously someone that's been afflicted by Hinamizawa syndrome. A lot of her actions, particularly towards the end of the arc with the, like, tips and the bridge scene, she just gets super delusional. The other scene that comes to mind is the classroom. Obviously that could be traced down to, like, a PTSD reaction from the abuse that she's received. But given the context of the story, I feel like it's more likely that plus Hinamizawa syndrome.
Right.
So I think that particularly Irie's connection to her makes me wonder if, like, Irie's purpose in the village is to try cure this syndrome. I don't really, like, we haven't really had a presentation on how that would work, but that's the kind of implication that I get from what Irie's doing as the, like, medical character in a story with a heavily medical undertone to it with that whole syndrome.
Yeah.
It's also interesting that, like, with Rika, especially once we get into Himatsubushi or Himitsubushi. Yeah. Like, she's obviously a character that knows a lot more what's going on in the story. And I wouldn't be surprised if, like, we have this connection with Irie, Sadako, and Rika on that being, like, one, I guess social circle is probably the wrong way to put it, but, like, Rika knowing more of what's going on maybe is, like, the information relay point for Irie to be like, hey, Sadako's having a rough case of the syndrome, Irie. Would you mind coming over here?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's definitely...
He's a fun character.
Yeah, I'm still definitely at a point with Irie where I'm just like throwing out a bunch of stuff as much as I can. Also, I want to throw this line up on screen. There's some line towards the end of the arc where I was like, this was the line that led to me saying that Keiichi hallucinated the whole thing.
Right.
Where it's like, what if I was in a vegetative state after a car accident or whatever? And that's, as I said then, like one of these lines that totally could be what's happening and maybe could reflect like what Irie is doing if we get like a parallel later on where maybe that's what does happen to Keiichi, or whether that's like maybe what actually happened to him at the end of Arc 1 rather than him like clawing his own throat out. He was like
maybe
hit by a car and because
now he's like facing his inner demons in a dream space.
Well, no, but like the end of Arc 1 and 2 were very parallel, and they both ended in a scene where Keiichi seemed to be just delusional.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if maybe that line where he's like, "What if I'm in a vegetative state in a hospital or whatever?" I don't remember the exact wording of it. Is what's actually happened at the end of each arc, and him like losing his shit is what we perceive.
Yeah, for sure.
The other thing that was really fun this arc in terms of things that I just really could not nail down, and you'll hear me get to this in the Higurashi arc recap 1, is Rika's death this arc.
What? Pretty shocking.
I didn't like, it was all bundled up in that one big last episode, so we didn't really stop to talk about it all that much. And we also had a week after that before we did the recap. But I think that something that totally just flew by me in the moment was how much the like ritualistic death that Rika had matched what Takano described in Arc 2 when they were in the storehouse.
Yep. It's Watanagashi. Yeah.
Which is obviously like super significant in a lot of ways.
Very symbolic. Yeah. Well, the fun thing about that particular death is that, like, anyone could have beaten a housewife to death or pushed someone off a cliff or whatever, or gone missing in the swamp. But, like, if someone is Watanagashi-ing people, they have to know about the Watanagashi-ing.
Yeah.
Obviously, that draws suspicion on some specific characters like Takano, because she brings it up in Arc 2.
Yep.
Like the Sonozakis, because they're apparently also doing it in Arc 3. Like, there's all sorts of characters that you'd have to throw out if they don't have any knowledge of this procedure.
Yeah.
Although, there's always, the possibility. Like, Keiichi is secretly a part of the Oyashiro-sama cult, and he knows how to Watanagashi because of some bullshit. I don't know. But, like, yeah, it's a super big clue. And I think that it's quite clever in that, like, because you could make all sorts of theories based on the first two arcs of it. Well, maybe there's like some force from outside of Hinamisawa that we haven't seen yet, but like, it's a pretty clear clue that whoever killed Rika certainly is someone in the village or with strong ties to the village. It kind of shuts down those person X approaches, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I do very much like that. It was something that I think, had I made that connection the first time through Arc 3 before editing, it would have lent a lot more to my reasoning.
Yeah.
Because I think that that's a super significant piece of information. I think also, when we get down to like the whole guardian deity thing, if Rika is like supposedly the guardian deity of Hinamizawa reincarnate, then the thing that happens following that is kind of the logical next step. Once the guardian deity is gone, then we can gas the whole village, right?
Right.
And particularly when we get to the end of Arc 1, I think you'll hear a lot of similarities between this and the Hamatsubushi recap 1. But like when we get down to the end of Arc 1 and it's like something happened that made everyone suspicious again. Is that the disaster? Is that why Rika went missing or just stopped showing up rather in Arc 1? And then because Rika wasn't like ritualistically killed out in the open, in Arc 2. Is that why it doesn't seem like the disaster happened in Arc 2? Then that also makes me less suspicious of the Sonozaki family, because the Sonozaki family seemingly still ritualistically killed her in their bunker, but at that point it's not like presented the same way. We don't have the same open confirmation of whether the Great Hinamizawa disaster happened or not.
True. I guess I wanted to kind of poke at that idea of the guardian deity or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, because if Rika is the reincarnation of Oshiro-sama or whatever's going on there, why would she be killed? Because there's hints in Arc 4, and you reckon you found some in the other arcs that show that Rika knows more of what's going on.
Yep.
Why, if she is a guardian deity, how is she so vulnerable, apparently? What's going on there?
Because I don't think she's a deity.
Okay.
I think that she's a young girl who has the reputation.
Right.
Like going back to those modes of myth, right? Where when it said like reincarnation or something, maybe it was meant to be that like, here is this family heirloom that you were to pass down to the eighth successive daughter of the family. But then over the years, that's become this heirloom has become symbolized as like the power of gods.
Sure.
So what it really means is like, you know, maybe Rika has like an amulet or something. But
maybe she has a belt with seven gems in it, and they spell out the name of the land. Maybe that'd be a thing.
Maybe.
Shout out to that reference.
Very flimsy. So yeah, I don't know what you're really fishing at there. I don't think that Rika is like astoundingly supernatural in any one way.
No, for sure.
So I think that her death is like largely symbolic.
Sure.
Especially when we get down to the theme of like, is it magic, is it human? If the person who's carrying all of this out, Takano, is trying to make it seem like magic, then obviously she's going to go along with what the mythology says.
Okay.
Which is that Rika is some super powerful being who can, you know, like raise entire islands from the ocean floor.
Damn right.
And put them through stories over and over again. But like, I don't think that's what we're really getting at.
Sure. No, fair enough. Just wanna pick your brain, see what you're feeling. Yeah, totally. So you feel like Rika's just some little girl, I love it symbolic, which is cool. Do you think that there is any like supernatural stuff going on, or where are you sitting on that front? Kind of meta level.
I still have not moved from my initial position, right?
Okay.
Which is that whatever we see that is told to us as magic is probably just a reinterpretation of something that is real.
Sure.
Like, that's just how I roll. That's just the way it's gonna be.
Fair enough.
Even if the story tells me otherwise, even if we have some cute god show up and be like, sup, bitches, fight me, I'm gonna be like, well, clearly this is just a reinterpretation of Irie's dreams.
Yeah. It says avocado-filled sweet dreams.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, I want to try and find a way for this to work in the way that I am approaching this story.
Sure.
I think one thing, as I've said in a few previous recaps, there's a lot of people I know that have come out of Higurashi and then go on to Umineko have a more open to magic approach.
Sure.
Which, as I've said, has made me think that maybe I should be more open to magic going forwards. And I still definitely am trying to be more open to the idea, but I also think that perhaps that's an opportunity for me to do some more original thinking, and rather than just going with the crowd of like, well, yes, it's magic, I can try come up with something of my own in regards to how this is maybe actually a real, quote, story.
Well, of course, if it was all magic, then you could just say whatever you wanted and we just have to accept it as fact, and there wouldn't be any thinking involved. So that would just be silly.
I will neither confirm nor deny.
Now you're stealing my phrase. What is it with you and Mr. Fury, anyway?
I don't know. Yeah, jeez.
What else do you want to talk about, dude? You got like a bunch of notes here. You've noted some stuff about remembering. You've noted that Rena is scary.
That's not what that note actually says.
That's definitely what that note says. It says Ren is scary.
It was, well, yeah,
I can see it, and I agree. Scarily attractive. It's a quote
from Rika, I think, which hopefully I can put up on screen.
It is. Ren is scary. I remember the line.
I think that as I've kind of gone on, I've noticed that the like symptoms that Keiichi has had of Hinamizawa syndrome, love that it has a name, have slowly been revealed to be more consistent across the cast. As I said, with Sadako having a lot of weird hallucinations, and particularly, once Teppei is gone, maybe having a bit of that like persecution complex, where she's like punishing herself for, by sitting in a shower for however long.
In the morning, having a bath in the morning like a psychopath.
Just the worst. I think that the symptoms we see of Hinamizawa syndrome are maybe a bit more like visually apparent. Maybe that's why Keiichi has been shown to like be showing everything on his face. Obviously just because it's like a fun gimmick for his character, but also because it's actually maybe meant to be a clue.
Okay, sure.
So when Reek is like, oh, Ren is scary, after Ren has flashed the eyes, like maybe we're meant to be going like, oh, Ren has just had a bout of the syndrome, and Rika's pointing out that she can see it. It's not just Keiichi's delusions.
Sure.
Yeah. I think the other thing back towards there that I really wanted to point out, can we put this up on screen?
Oh, run it up.
Keiichi mentions Uishi's name before it's brought up.
Maybe you just heard it in passing, dude. Who knows?
Maybe he did.
Maybe he did.
Honestly, would not surprise me. However, one thing that I really, really, really have been looking out for and have not spotted as much as I was hoping is characters remembering things that have happened that haven't happened. And
are you pushing some kind of supernatural agenda here? Because that doesn't seem in character for you at all, sir.
Well, we can talk about the supernatural implications of this, but I don't think that this is outside the scope of the way that I like to outline my theories.
Sure.
Which is to say that, like, obviously there are events that happen over and over again, like the curry contest and just a few of the club scenes that have slowly been cut out because we don't really need to see them over and over again. But I think we are getting to a point now where we are subtly getting slipped in things like this, which are characters saying things they shouldn't already know.
Mm-hmm.
Which means that Keiichi, the narrator, is becoming a different character to Keiichi, the person.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when we get down to Himatsubushi, where we have the whole presentation of Akisaka going like, hey, if only I could have been there to stop this whole incident. Very much implies to me that we're going to get some fucking bullshit where characters show up where they shouldn't be, characters remember things that they shouldn't, so that eventually we can Groundhog Day our way out of this.
Maybe they'll just make a time machine and just like go back, and then that's how Oishi and Akisaka save the day.
They
pop up,
not even
like,
be disappointed.
Keiichi's standing there with his bat in front of the big bad. He's like, you'll never defeat me. And then they're like, yes, I will. And then fog machine and the time machine. It's like a little cardboard box with a little writing in like marker that says time machine on it. And then Oishi bursts it open, and then he kicks ass.
Now, the other thing, the last delusional theory I wanted to address. Is Satoshi the baseball bat?
Definitely. 100%.
Someone posted this as a joke theory, and I don't remember where it was. I think it was on the Discord. And I thought about it for a while, and I was like, this isn't actually too far-fetched.
Yeah.
If we were to say that Sadako, used to use this baseball bat to, like, defend herself.
Right.
Right? And that's what it means by having her brother with her, and then, the baseball bat's been taken away and locked away in this locker, and Sadako's told not to touch it, and that's why it's not been opened for a year, and that's why it's all moldy and musty.
Makes sense to me.
I genuinely do not think it's that far-fetched to say that Satoshi is not in fact a character, but is in fact a baseball bat.
I believe it. You know what? If there's any theory you've made today that makes any lick of sense, it's that one. It's the characters of baseball bats.
The thing is, right? I do not believe it.
What?
Why
not?
I do not believe it to be true.
Why not?
I just wanted to point out
But it's a good theory.
that I love...
That's the kind of meme theory that I would make and stick with for as long as I possibly could, dude.
It's so much fun. The thing is I feel like I need to genuinely try here, but part of me just almost wants to make this theory my working theory because it's so much fun to like think of, when Red is like, oh yeah, Satoshi started carrying around a baseball bat around this time too. So then we talk about like Sadako's rocking up with dual wielded baseball bats. Yeah, dude. She's like stuck them together, fucking Darth Maul style.
Dude, I want to challenge you to try and make a theory that works for the Himatsubushi second recap. Himatsuburushi, sorry, I misspoke. I want you to give that a go.
Alrighty,
and hopefully we'll have finished Miyakashi by then, and you can, even with the new info, we can make it.
It's time, Ben.
What?
For the Umineko spoiler section.
Yay! We haven't been in that section?
We haven't, because right now, I'm about to say something I haven't said.
Okay.
We are going story spoilers for Umineko.
Yay, finally.
So fucking get
the fuck
out of
out,
here
you nerds. Go read Umineko. Alright, you have
10 seconds. 9.
8.
7.
6.
5.
4. 3.
1. Okay. Okay, Ben, who the fuck is writing this story and what is with this repeating timeline bullshit?
I don't know what you're talking about.
All right?
No repeating timelines here.
Let's
I've never seen a repeating timeline in my life, dude.
All right, so Toya and Ikuko, right?
Y'all better get out of here if you don't know who those people are. I'm just saying, you got 10 seconds. Get lost.
All right, so those motherfuckers, right?
Yeah, what about them?
I still think that they put together most of the tail end of Umineko.
I'm with you.
Right, but...
The tail end, you mean the last 6 episodes?
Well, yes.
All the tail, the body and the tail, but yes.
But I think that there's a bit more hybridization in the earlier part there.
That's a different theory video. Go watch our playthrough.
Yeah, go watch the Umineko playthrough.
Or welcome after watching it.
But one of the things there is that, we had the carry across of the meta knowledge, the characters in the meta space there, right?
Which we don't have here.
But what if that's what Keiichi is getting in the narration sense when he's like, oh, it's Uishi, before Uishi introduces himself? Yeah. What if we're getting that separation now? Because, now that we've had the introduction of Akasaka and Uishi supposedly as the authors towards the end of Himatsuburushi. What if that's what we're getting at, right? What if that's kind of where we're going with this story?
Do you think that Uishi and Akasaka are witches and they're just writing this whole thing? They're weaving this grand tale?
I feel as though that could be true. I don't necessarily know if I should take the authorship in this story in the same sense that I took it in Umineko.
I guess here's the question.
Yeah.
Do you think that we will get the witch narrative in this story? When all that implies, do you think that there will be characters who come out of the woodwork like, I am a witch and I write stories and I do magic and stuff? Do you think that's going to be part of the story? I
want to say yes, but I don't think it's going to be in the same way that we saw it. In Umineko.
Fair enough. Okay, good. Makes sense, I suppose.
Obviously when we get down to Umineko, there was a very clear distinction where the characters on the meta level were interacting as a superiority over the characters on the game board.
Yep.
Whereas so far halfway through Higurashi in theory,
we haven't seen that.
We're still rather than, I think the way that I'm kind of looking at this is that if we were to draw time like a bubble, okay, we got the bubble of the village, and then in every direction going out from there, we have forwards and backwards time from the actual story.
Makes sense to me. It doesn't, but keep going.
The point being that the way that characters interact from the past and the future of the story seems to have a superiority over the center timeline of the story, right? Okay. So Rika in the past in Himatsubushi can understand what's about to happen in the future, the core timeline, and then in the future we have them looking back and supposedly writing a story trying to figure out what actually happened in the village.
Sure.
Okay? Now, I appreciate that seems super magical, whereas
because it is. Because clearly it was all witches and ghosts.
But the thing is, right, is if Rika knew what was going to happen going into it, why isn't she actively working to stop that? Right? And
an interesting question. Maybe she is.
Well, that's what I'm kind of getting at, right? Okay. Is that because Rika in the past has an understanding and things aren't kind of getting to the present pressing, murders are happening, all of this going on. The reason she's able to be so open and forward with Akasaka is because there's less risk for her to make that action, which is why I'm saying that's like a quote, superior timeline, right? That she has more control over what's going to happen in the main body of the story in the past because no one's going to be actively working against her to do so.
Okay.
Right?
So you think that someone is contesting Eureka as main witch?
Not what I was getting at, but I'll let that statement hang. And then in the future, right, things have already happened, so then we have the characters building an understanding. Like, it's not going to be the same cause and effect that we had for the Metaspace, the Game Board, Golden Land, all that nonsense. But
all that trash. Throw it out of here.
How dare you? But I do think that it's going to be something along the lines of, like, a bit of a Groundhog Day thing, where if we look at, like, time repeating stories, let's just go with Groundhog Day, because it's the one that typically gets the name drop on it.
Sure.
Like, all of the times that he's like, hey, I'm repeating time, holy shit, look at all the times I've repeated time. I've been shot, I've been killed, I've thrown myself off cliffs, like, all of that. Every time he's super forward with it, it doesn't work. It's only once he plays out the day in an optimal way to make everyone happy, to improve his own relationship with the woman he's after or whatever, that we, like, escape that timeline.
Sure.
So I think maybe if we view Higurashi, the story, as the experimentation for Rika on how she's going to get out of that. Like, let's say that Rika in the past is like, hey, Akasaka, could you do this for me? And then the rest of these stories are hypotheses on how this could have gone wrong. And then we eventually will get to Matsuri Bayashi, which is either the hypothesis of how everything could go right, or is the truth of how they did it after they figured out how everything else could go wrong and corrected what they were going to do.
Sure.
Right? Now, it's obviously very difficult to kind of fit a non-magical interpretation into that. But I think that...
Are you going to go down with an authorship theory? Is that where this is heading?
That's kind of where it's heading, right? Is that whoever is writing this story, I don't have as solid of an idea, because we obviously only just got the implication of authorship kind of introduced.
Well, we do have some interesting statements from characters in Umineko if we're going to use reasoning from there, which is kind of up to you whether you want to or not, because there was a time period between Ryukoshi writing Higurashi and Umineko, and obviously his ideas have probably changed in that time. But we know that, there's some characters like Burn Castell and Lambda Delta who talk about authorship and, like, their situations with game boards and how it's affected them and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so, like, obviously, going into this, I think that by the time Ryukoshi got to Umineko, Lambda Delta and Burn Castle are representations of, like, hybridizations of characters from Higurashi.
Okay.
But I don't think that's going to help me understand Higurashi, because that happened for Ryukoshi probably after he wrote Higurashi.
Sure.
Right? And maybe that's what he will get to later on. Maybe we'll have Burn Castle introduced as a character later on. But I don't think that that's, like, explicitly what we're going with right now. Obviously, because you're using the Burn Castle voice for when Rika gets all creepy.
What? That's crazy.
Like, that's obviously meant to be an explicit choice, but I don't know... Like,
I'm definitely implying more than I'm saying.
Yeah, I ascribe that more to be your choice than Ryukoshi's, so let's put it that way.
For sure.
Right? And I think that's a fun presentation, that's a fun interpretation, especially coming from the context of Umineko. I love it, right? And spoilers, he uses the Burn Castle voice for Rika going forward.
Spoilers. Just occasionally,
But like... as I said, I ascribe that to be your choice and your interpretation. So I don't want to, like, hardline my reasoning on your interpretation.
No, that's fair. Use the text. Don't use my bullshit. I could be trying to mislead you. Who knows?
Yeah. Now, the other fun thing that we're getting into now with Mayakashi is that supposedly Shion's the main character, right?
Yay!
Now, does that mean that we're going to get, let's just say, for sake of example and my expectation, we're going to get Watanagashi from Shion's perspective in 1983? Or does this mean we're going to get what happened to Satoshi in 1982 from the perspective of Shion?
Right. You think we'll get to see Satoshi?
Well, as I said to you towards the end of Himatsubushi, my goodness, look at all these spoilers.
I know. Spoilers, go watch the playthrough.
It's not even out yet, Ben, they can't.
I know. They will.
Because we've had this like time jump to the past with Akasaka, I think that that's going to have us like shift our perception of the story to allow more of that time jumping nonsense to come in.
Literally just changing your expectations, right?
Because, you know, reframing, recontextualizing, changing the premise is something that Ryukishi's obviously been very comfortable with through Umineko. So I think that we're starting to see that come forth more in his writing now that we're getting those changes.
For sure.
So yeah, it's so much fun. I'm really glad we did Umineko first. Not only because if we didn't do Umineko first, I never would have got to this.
Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't have bought into the premises easily, and you would not have cared for the slice of life. Like, this is one of those fun conversations that we should really just do a whole video on its own. But like, trying to pitch Ryukishi's works to people. If I say like, it's like if you took like Sickly Sweet My Little Pony shit and then just like grim dark, you know, like if you slap those two opposing sides together and that made a coherent story, people be like, what are you even talking about? Like, how, like, I don't know. I find that pitching Higurashi people is very difficult. Umineko, not so much. I just say it's a deconstruction of the murder mystery genre. And they're like, all right, murder mystery sounds fun. And we go from there. But like, I do think that if you can convince someone to read Higurashi first, you should. I think that is like an objective thing that you should do. But no problems do it the other way around. And especially in the case of people who just do not gel with Higurashi's writing style. Or they want it writing that's marginally more polished. I won't say greatly more polished because he still needs a goddamn editor. But yeah.
Big true.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that going forwards, the way that those of you who are familiar with Umineko should perceive the way that I'm looking at this story is that I'm trying to iron out how Ryukishi has evolved his timeline, jumping, repeating circles, bullshit into Umineko. And
Bubbles.
I think that we're getting more towards like that meta construction of the other periods in time affecting the core timeline of the story, right? So we'll maybe get Akasaka, because of Rika's actions in the past, starting to affect the core timeline of 1983. We're going to have Akasaka and Oishi in the future discover more of what happened, so that's the context for us having unveiled more of what happened in 1983. So if we mentally look at the past and future as the meta space of Higurashi, I think that that's a good way that we can kind of look at Ryukishi's writing style and how that evolved to then be the like literal meta spaces of Umineko.
Do you think we'll be doing more jumps in the future and like seeing what happens? Maybe we'll jump back and see, you know, Akasaka and Oishi again?
I think so. I'm not like betting on it.
Okay.
If anything, I think it's just as likely that that's just the context for how their characters will appear in the story in future.
Sure.
Right? So if we say that like we see Oishi uncovering more of the investigation, getting more information, that's then a reflection of his meta reasoning in the future being put into the story as a written work.
Yeah, for sure.
Or if we see Akasaka come forwards from the past, we can say that, maybe Oishi wrote arcs 1 to 3, not realizing that Akasaka rocked up because he was doing something like undercover or whatnot.
Maybe Oishi will just show up and he's wearing like a dunce wizard cap and like bathrobes and he'll just wave his magic wand and he'll save the day.
Looking forward to it.
That sounds like a good ending.
Yeah. So, man, I am really, really loving where we're up to in the story. I think that I was kind of a little disappointed that we were so close in terms of editing and uploading, because we were a lot further ahead in our recordings in Umineko.
Well, Umineko, we like had that whole buffer partly to get, videos in the way, but also to see if you would keep reading the story.
Yeah.
I was definitely like I don't have that fear for Higurashi. I had this nagging in the back of my mind when we were reading Umineko of like, what if we get to like episode 4 and he like doesn't care about Beatrice, or like, what if we get to the end of episode 2 and he's like, this is impossible, and he throws the book. But I don't think we're going to have that problem with Higurashi.
Yeah. But I was a little disappointed we didn't have that headway because I really like looking back on much older stuff when I'm editing because that tends to be what I find most useful, having the most context when I'm editing.
For sure.
But I think that going through Tatari Higurashi just before the answer arcs,
I think it's good.
Was a really good lineup.
Well, it's good because you've read like the 3 most relevant question arcs right before going into Miyakashi. I think that puts you in a really primed position to get some solid theory work done before we dive into the answer arcs. Because this is the thing I tell everyone: if you finish Arc 4 of Higurashi, Episode 4 of Umineko, you take a break.
Yeah.
You go and you look over your notes and you reread bits and pieces. You don't have to read the whole thing, just bits and pieces. You watch YouTube or whatever it is, and that's when you make your big theories. So, yeah, look forward to that. Look forward to the answer arc spilling all of the beans.
So we're gonna open up Miyakashi with a hopefully tidy summary of my theories going into it,
and we'll see if you are completely wrong. Or completely correct.
I'm very excited.
Or somewhere in the middle.
Well,
That's all of it?
I think that's all I really had to say on theories. I did want to conclude. We made some points towards the latter ends of the previous recaps on how I was starting to approach this story less analytically.
Yay!
And I think that's still true.
That's literally, like, that's Higurashi, right? That's Higurashi versus Umineko. You can still approach it with that, like, let's solve a murder mystery, but, like... It's not that it has more heart, because Umineko also has a lot of heart. There's just something a bit more casual about it, I think. I don't know. It's hard to put my finger on exactly, but it doesn't require you to think as hard to get that core.
It also doesn't tell you to think as hard.
It doesn't tell you.
And I think that that's something that maybe put a lot of people off Umineko.
Yep.
It certainly did the explicit opposite to me.
Yep. You just thought it was more interesting.
But I
think the emotional core is just a lot more exposed in this one.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
I think that's probably the way that I would put it.
You kind of need to solve the puzzle to understand the emotions of Umineko, whereas you need to understand the emotions to solve the puzzle in this one.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Umineko has a lot more moments that if you aren't on top of things will just go over your head. You go watch episodes freaking 5's ending or the final bit where we're like, oh, like you had that moment of like, this is what the whole story was about.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. It's a fantastic moment.
Yeah. And I mean, ultimately, when we get down to it, we're like, Umineko's a story about love and Higurashi's a story about friendship.
Love and friendship.
Yeah, like...
loving friendship, one might say.
To basically what I'm saying is going back to where I came into the story from the perspective of... Yeah. I think that we're still very much exploring that whole thing. Like, as much as I might be getting my theories down to the point of, like, Rika's working with Irie to solve the syndrome, which means that she's not telling her friends the entire truth, and Sadako has killed her parents and is...
Well, actually, something to bring up then.
Yeah.
Almost all of the characters have killed in some capacity or another, right? Like, Keiichi killed Renmu Mion in Arc 1, and then Teppei, and Sadako obviously pushes Keiichi off the bridge, and you reckon that she also, like, killed her parents. Mm-hmm. Mion had her whole thing in Arc 2. We don't know about Rika, but she's getting killed, apparently. Like, a lot of the characters end up murdering for one reason or another. You very much get that sense of, like, even though it is a story that is about friendship, there's a lot of killing. There's a lot of killing each other, specifically.
Well, when we get to the end of Umineko, right? And we've kind of, like, seen that the entire exercise of the murder games was futile for the intended purpose, right?
Yeah.
If we were to go back and look at the goal of the game boards to say, like, it was to make Battler notice.
Yep.
And it fucking failed.
Notice me, senpai, or I will kill all of your family.
So I think that when we get to Higurashi, it's the same thing, right? That we're looking at all of these murders from the perspective of why they are arguably redeemable.
Okay.
Or at least why the people that carried them out did so. And I think that we're going to maybe get into not necessarily a deconstruction, but we're going to start to see why that's untrue, why it will work better when that doesn't happen.
Sure.
When we get to timelines where, like, the murders aren't carried out by the people in the club, how that kind of, like, improves how things go for them. Yeah.
There you go. I guess we'll have to see how we go moving into the answer arc, see how your opinions change. Looking forward to the Himatsubarushi second recap. We'll probably talk a bit about that. And of course, Meikashi itself. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah, enjoy Himatsubarushi.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah, it is a fun time. It's a weird arc. But hey, it's right. We're slowly getting to the best arc. Shout out to Arc 6, the best arc that ever existed. We're getting there. We're almost arrived at the station.
Minagoroshi when?
Hey!
Might even be out by now.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Next time.
Next time.